That's great. And now for tracking, I know actually I've had conversations actually with, this is a question from Louise. How do we make sure that people are tracking? Like, when do they start tracking? Like pre-event? Do they do it on site? Is it attendee? Like where, like, how do you put your arms around this? I mean, there's a lot to manage here. And how do we make sure that we're all tracking the right thing?
Shawna, do you want to stab that one? It's so big. It's like,
who wants to take that one?
Yeah, you start.
And like I told my team, I know it can be an exact science, Shawna, you have demonstrated that, but I'm also okay if we overestimate. I'd rather plant more trees than we actually consumed, because that's better. So I really tell the team, I'm like, give it your best, track your best, but in all things overestimate, you know, so that we can make a better impact.
Yeah, and I concur with that. I mean, the bottom line is there are rules for carbon accounting. There are best practices for waste. And at a minimum, we should always wrap our arms around the stuff we own, what's called our scope 1, and the stuff that is off the grid, our scope 2, so our direct electricity and natural gas and those types of things. Scope 3 is where it gets into the Wild West of what we're never quite sure what we should be counting or not. And no one's really giving us a lot of good direction. And to me, for events, that is where the sticky bit is. And if we look at the guidance of like broader net zero initiatives like the Race to Zero and the SME Climate Hub, they tend to be steering us in the direction of what they call our material scope 3 emissions. And what constitutes material changes sector to sector. So for events, that typically steers us towards tracking things like air travel, at least for our employees, and in some cases for our event attendees as well. Our supply chain emissions that we actually can measure for. So our food, for example, would be a big thing at events, so it's probably considered material. But there is, I think that's why initiatives like the Net Zero Events Pledge are helpful, because finally we have organizations sitting down together that are across all vendor groups in the event industry, trying to give us direction on what in fact is material, so we can define that scope 3 a lot better. And I look forward to hopefully more direction coming from that. I think we have some guidance from folks like Amanda and others that have been doing this for a long time, but that direction will help to give us a bit more certainty as a sector of what everyone else is doing.
That's super helpful, Shawna. I think too, you just kind of have to start, right? Like you can just take a handful of metrics and as an event organizer or anyone, just go with it, just look at your waste, just look at your energy, look at water, track how much paper you're producing, track your carbon, or track your carpet, whatever it is. Just take things that feel big and meaningful to you and that you can relatively, there's always low hanging fruit, I think. And then once you start doing that, it gets a lot less scary. And then you can just build and build and build. And I think the thing I like to try and remember is like, look at the environmental, and then also, always remember that you have a social impact, like back to the point of why are we having a meeting and what's the outcome? If we're all going to meet in person, let's make sure that we're measuring those positive social impacts that we can do. And maybe potentially the negative social ones that come with doing an event.